welcome back. It's Pick and Winners of the Cheezeman, week number 15, NFL Survivor style. How'd you do last week? Did you win? Did you lose? It was another nutty week. I mean, how does Pittsburgh think they're a playoff team and they lose to Arizona and New England back to back? That is awful. Did you survive? My recommendation last week was New Orleans, and they pretty much won easily over Carolina at home, 28-6, so that survived. However, and I took them in another pool and in my recommendation on the primary pool that I'm playing along with still. But in another pool, I took Miami. I was debating in the mid-year pool. I was debating, should I take the more risky play of New Orleans or take the easy play of Miami at 13.5-point favorite, and they lost. Tyreek Hill gets hurt in the first quarter, which you see how much he means to that team. Without Tyreek Hill, they're nothing. That team is 7-7 or 8-8 or whatever we are these days. Very middle of the road team. How they lost beyond me, but they lose. And so, I didn't even want to show my mid-year stuff this year. I was doing well. And then the minute I show it, I'm gone. There you can see the primary play. I took New Orleans. Top 5 plays, we did okay. I was heavy into that Miami game and just got creamed. Here you can see top 5. We go 3-2. Cincinnati over was an easy one, and I even took Cincinnati over 44.5, and that hit. The Miami team total over is a loser. San Francisco team total over, loser. 28-16, they only hit 28. Isaiah Likely over, he hit it in the first quarter on that 50-yard touchdown pass. It was awesome. I like him again this week. Detroit, Chicago over. Now that hit because, like I said, I put the video out early last week, and I got in early on a couple of plays of these overs. I'm looking at them going, how are these so low? And I told you, like Cincinnati, Indy was way too low. Chicago, Detroit. By Sunday, they were up to like 43.5. So, it paid to get in early at least on some of those last week. You can see all those Miami total overs I lost on. It did not work this week. It worked a week ago, did not work this week. Denver Chargers under. We talked about that. Denver 6-1 to the under. Chargers 6-1-1 to the under since week 5, and it went under. Cincinnati team total over hit, but Indy team total over did not. That's the second time, only the second time. First time in America, Indy has not reached 20 points this year. Players that I was checking out last week. Now, again, I did it so early in the week, I didn't even really get to see any of their numbers. And that's why you're going to notice Cooper Kupp's on here, and he wasn't on here before. But look at that over total. It was under 50. I'm like, are you kidding me? Cooper Kupp under 50 yards? I mean, if you get a Justin Jefferson, a Diggs, a Tyreek Hill, a Cooper Kupp, these star receivers under 50 yards, I mean, how do you not play those? And I did, and he hit, obviously. But take a look at the others there. I mean, I did go Tyreek Hill, and he did not hit. He's still going to put 60 yards despite playing probably only about 30-40% of the plays. So I think he would have hit it had he played the whole game, but he got injured in the first quarter. McCaffrey ends up going over his rush total fairly easily, and I did stick with it because I mentioned last week I was worried about him in the second half. If San Francisco got out to big lead, then we'd see a lot of Elijah Mitchell in the second half. Well, when I heard Elijah Mitchell was out for the game, I'm like, play McCaffrey. I mean, he's going to be in there all the time, and it worked. George Kittle over, I told you I liked that one hit. DK Metcalf missed by 3-4 yards, which stunk because I really thought he would do better. Kamara missed his. I've talked about this. Tampa Bay has given up the most 100-yard receivers. We eyeballed one in Atlanta. We suggested Drake London. He only had like 170 yards receiving. And I did end up going Javonte Williams and Austin Eckler over their receiving yards, which were both pretty low, actually. When I went to look at it, Javonte was like 17 or 18, and Eckler was like 27 or 28, and they both crushed those totals. On the other side, you can see there, Tua bust, Tua Tyreek bust, Cooper Kupp winner, Jackson Cleveland over. Again, that ended up at more like 33 or 34 or something once it was discovered Trevor Lawrence was going to play. But I got in early on that. That was an easy over. Even if you waited till Sunday on that one, you hit the over. Cole Kmet over. I mentioned Bears, Lions. Both are horrible against tight ends. Kmet came through. Laporta did not. Bummer. I wish I would have got both of those. Mixon rush over hit. Now, you'll remember Cincinnati, Indy, I suggested Zach Moss rushing over too, but for the second week in a row, he was up in the high 70s, and I'm like, that's just too high. He's not Jonathan Taylor, and I know he had a couple big games early in the year, but he's not Jonathan Taylor. Quit putting his numbers so high, so I backed out of that one. And the big pool, 1,791 entries, 7 more eliminated. Half the pool gone last week. You can see those who chose Baltimore, New Orleans, advanced. Those who chose Green Bay and Pittsburgh, out. We're down to 7 players. And we still have 3 regular season games plus the playoffs to go. So congrats to those 7 people. They've done a great job. Mid-year pool, look at this. 8 entries were left, including me. I told you I was going to take New Orleans, and then I go, I'll play the easy pick, Miami. 8 entries, 6 more limited. We're down to 2 there. We're not going to make it to the end of the season, and this is a mid-year pool. Here's our metrics, and you can see, look at the black now. Most everything's in the black right now. The away favorite's the only thing still hanging out in the blue. Against the spread, now you can see here, the favorites are having a great year. Home teams are basically right where they're supposed to be against the spread, but your favorites are still ahead of their norms in every single category. In particular, away favorites, despite going 0-3-1 last week, they're still at 55% winners against the spread versus normally at 49.5%. Over-under, we had a 3rd straight over week. And I'm going to continue to lean over because I think you can see there historically, that's for like 18 years, 49.78% over-under. It's generally 50-50. 6-point favorites take another loser with Miami. And you can see now they're at 74-63, 50-17, exactly 1 game ahead of last year, 49-18. Crazy. We've had 17 upsets. We have 5 to go essentially for a normal year. And you can see we're at 1.21 per week. Normally we average 1.23. Take a look at our week 15 schedule. We got 6 home dogs. Actually, we only have 5 favorites of 6 points or higher. Some of these have come down, I think. We got Kansas City at 9.5. The Rams at 7 over Washington. Miami's 8.5 over the Jets. New Orleans 6 over the Giants. And then you've got San Francisco 13.5 at Arizona. Take a look at our worst 5 teams right now. And actually, the Giants have won 3 in a row at Tommy DeVito. Unbelievable. I don't get it. But anyways, they're probably going to break out of this bottom 5 at some point. But you can see Carolina, New England, Washington, Arizona, Giants, same as last week. Their overall record through week 14, 60-49, 25% winners. Means 75% of the time you can play against them and get a survivor win. Top 5 offenses and defenses. You can see the offenses, no real changes. Miami still 1. San Francisco moves up to 2. Detroit slides back to 3. Top defenses, Cleveland 1. But you can see Carolina and the Jets move into the top 5. How crazy is that? Carolina is what, 1-12? I mean, they're terrible. But they're in the top 5 defenses in the league. Top rushing defense is now San Francisco. Let's get into who's in play this week. We got 5 teams who are playoff teams. You can see the 5 there. And number 1, we're looking at San Francisco. Same stuff. Basically 10-0 with Debo, 0-3 without. Debo, 32 points with Debo, 17 without. They won 3 straight against Arizona, covering all 3. And you can see it's very similar to San Francisco versus Seattle. I mean, the score, San Francisco 111-39 against Arizona these last 3 games. Yards clearly ahead. Turnovers, Arizona 6, San Francisco none. Week 4, Frisco beat them 35-16. McCaffrey had 106 yards rushing, 71 yards receiving, and 4 touchdowns that game. But as long as they keep doing what they're doing, they don't commit turnovers, I mean, this one's going to be a blowout, just like the other ones. They're a team you can trust. Their defense is solid, and their offense is insane good, especially with Debo out there. So you can see down there, my favorite play, San Francisco team total over. It's 29.5 again. And then McCaffrey is rushing over. Again, we have to check if Elijah Mitchell's playing or not. If he's not, I'll definitely look at it. But that's your best survivor play if you can use them. New England, Kansas City. I like Kansas City. First of all, Pat Mahomes has never lost 3 games in a row in the NFL. That's number 1. And 2, I expect the Kansas City receivers have taken so much abuse this year for dropping balls. For the Kadarius Toney offsides, dude, what are you doing? Can you just line up on the line correctly? How hard is that? But like I said, Mahomes never lost 3 in a row. And he's only played in 5 games ever with an over-under at 45 or less. He's 4-1 to the over, 4-1 wins in those games. Okay, I think the loss might have been his first season as a starter. But he's only lost 2 straight, 3 times in his career. And then in that game after, he's won all 3 by an average of 22 points per game, 3-0 against the spread. I think I'm going to play the trend because New England really can't score. Now, they beat Pittsburgh last week, who's just a pile of weirdness this year, right? But we know Kansas City's not weirdness. We know their defense is a top 5 defense, and they stop offenses, and New England can't score. And we know Mahomes is going to find a way to put some points on the board. I kind of feel this game is going to be something like 24-6. I'm going to take Kansas City. I'm probably going to take the under. Giants and New Orleans. Now, here's the freaky thing here, right? We talked about last week, the Giants, really statistically aren't very good. The Packers had been on fire. But the Packers had one flaw in their game, and that's defense against the run. And guess what the Giants did? They actually had a coach who looked at the stats, who looked at the game film, and saw where you can expose and beat Green Bay, and he did it. Barkley had a great game. Tommy DeVito rushed for over 70 yards. The weird thing here is we have a similar situation. New Orleans has a pretty good offense, a pretty good defense, you can see there, but their one weakness is rush defense. It's the same thing. The only difference is we're going to New Orleans. The Saints desperately need a win. And New Orleans can buckle it up and play well at home. So I do like New Orleans, but I want to say the Giants are getting 6 points, and I don't know if New Orleans covers at 6. The Giants, they average 14.1, but in the last 3, they're averaging almost 22 points a game. So definitely an improvement with DeVito. Part of it is because he runs well. But one thing to note here, the Giants' defense is much better at home. They're giving up almost 30 points a game on the road. New Orleans is no offensive juggernaut, but there's a part of me that says the Giants are scoring more points now, so they're not so awful on offense anymore. And New Orleans has been giving up more defensively the last several weeks. So at 36.5, it might be low enough to take that over. It is a similar setup to the Green Bay game, so I do think the Giants can exploit that rush defense and put some points up. And, the key becomes Barkley versus New Orleans rush defense. I might take Barkley's rush over, depending on what it is. Number 4, Philly, Seattle. Philly's played one of the hardest stretches maybe in the history of football. I mean, they played Miami and beat them. Washington, beat them. Then Dallas and won. Kansas City and won. Buffalo and won. San Francisco, they get beat. And then Dallas, they get beat. Jalen Hurts is 24-4 the last 2 years in the regular season. I mean, 2 of those losses came in the last 2 weeks against 2 of the best teams. He really doesn't lose ever. And now you're going against a team that is definitely exposed defensively. They have some great players there. But, Philadelphia has one of the best offenses in the league. Seattle has given up a lot of 100-yard receivers. I think A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, we've got to check out which matchup we feel best about. But certainly one, maybe both could be overs in this game. I like the Philadelphia team total to go over. The Jets in Miami. Now, I'm putting Miami in here, but there's a definite caveat here, and that's if Tyreek Hill plays. They're saying that he should. And so I expect Tyreek Hill to get back in here and play. 3 weeks ago, Miami beat the Jets in New York 34-13. They handled him easily, but that was a Tim Boyle 2-interception game. And Miami outgained the Jets 395-159. I mean, and Waddle and Tyreek both had over 100 yards receiving. Now, the Jets had lost 5 straight until crushing Houston last week, getting Zach Wilson back in the saddle. And maybe that was good to have him sit out a couple games. Tim Boyle absolutely was not an answer. I don't even know why they tried that. But now when you look at it, maybe Zach Wilson needed that, and now he'll start playing better. Ramsey and Xavier Howard stunk last week, so they got to get their heads out and play better. Zach Wilson gives them an opportunity to do that. I look at Mostert or A-Chain rushing yards. You can see the Jets are 28th in rush defense. Otherwise, they're a strong defense. So there have been teams that have exploited the Jets running the ball. And if you go back and look at game film and you watch how Tua and Tyreek and Waddle blew it up last time against the Jets may focus more against the pass this time and then leave the running open a bit. Leaves it open for Mostert or A-Chain to have a decent game. I do like Miami to get it back. Now, in-play non-playoff team options, and I'm not necessarily saying these are the 6th and 7th best choices. They may be 1 and 2. But for non-playoff teams right now at least, the Rams. Love the Rams. I love the Rams offense. I've talked about this. When they're healthy, when you have Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka, Atwell, and Kyron Williams back there, he's been great. This offense is killing it, man. So the last 2 games, they've done it against Cleveland and Baltimore. They put up 399 yards, 414 yards. So if you think Washington's 32nd ranked defense scares them, I don't think so. The OU is 49. Washington's gone over that total 8 times. The Rams 6 times. So when you combine teams that have done that, usually you have a pretty big scoring game. I mean, Sam Howell and Washington can score. The Rams aren't they're not a team that actually shuts people down usually. So the whole key here is as long as Washington and Howell can keep scoring a bit, I think the Rams then will keep pouring it on. The problem you run into here is McVay is not the type of coach to run it up. So it depends what you think will happen. I'm going to root for Washington to score some points because I want to take the Rams team total over. and I want to play Cooper Kupp's over. It's at like 68. I still think that's way too low. I haven't seen Pukanuka's or anybody else's, but, I'd take a look at those and see where they're at. I like the Rams this game. I would take them and give the 7. Washington 6-11 off buys, 5-12 against the spread off buys. They didn't look good their last time out. They've lost 4 straight. You can see there by 150-70. They've just gotten slammed. And I do like the Rams. I would play them in Survivor if you have an opportunity to do so. Cincinnati and Minnesota. Now, how freaking impressed are you with Jake Browning? Look at his numbers, man. Last 2 games, 50 of 61 for 629 and 3 bingos, 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, I know that's against Jacksonville and Indiana. Both those are bottom 6 or 8 pass defenses. But that is impressive as heck, isn't it? I mean, we haven't seen other people do that. Cincinnati looks great the last couple of weeks. Minnesota's looked awful. I mean, they won 3-0 in a game that, if you love to watch punting, go back and watch that replay. There is 17 freaking punts. I would ask for my money back. If I want to see a pump, packs, and kick competition, I'll go down to the local ball field. But to watch that in an NFL game? What the? Now, Josh Dobbs is getting benched. Nick Mullins is going to start. Now, of course, he played San Francisco as a backup. He was not very good as a starter. But he is in his 3rd, 4th year. However, in this first game back, when he came in, he didn't do so good last week. And Justin Jefferson got hurt and left the game. I think it was a chest injury this time. So the question is he going to play? And if he doesn't, then I really don't like Minnesota. But as it is, Mullins coming back, his first start here this year out of the blue. It's going to be tough for him in Cincinnati, out of that dome. Browning's been phenomenal. Mixon's running the ball great. I think Cincinnati smokes them here. I think they're my play of the week. Honestly, I'll take Cincinnati minus 3.5, and I would play him in Survivor as well. Chase Brown, boy, he ran 280 miles an hour. He ran faster than Tyreek Hill did, the kid from Illinois. So I would look at his rushing and receiving overs because he's the second back, and they're not paying attention to him, and his numbers are lower. TJ Hawkins, Cincinnati's the worst team against the tight end. We've been riding this trend a lot lately. So TJ Hawkinson, his total is up to 50.5. That's a little high, man, especially with Mullins coming in. But if there's a place for Mullins to have a safety valve, it's going to be Hawkinson, so I still might play that one. We'll see what the number actually is. I like Cincinnati that game. Here's your maybes, 4 of them. Start off with Green Bay, Tampa Bay. Now, Green Bay's won 4 of 6 over the Rams, Chargers, Detroit, and Kansas City. That's pretty impressive until last week. And you can see that they've been averaging 390 yards a game the last 5 as a top 5 offense. Last week, they only had 326 yards. But they had 3 turnovers against the Giants. Jordan Love threw an interception. He fumbled. And then they had a muffed or fumbled punt return. Ridiculous. And they blew the game. And then the Giants exploded on that rushing defense. Now, Tampa comes in, and they don't really run the ball so well. As you can see there, they're like the 29th ranked rush offense. I do expect Rachaad White, though, to have a decent game. We'll see what his rushing over is. That might be a play. Tampa, of course, is the number 1 team in terms of giving up 100-yard receiver games. Green Bay has not had one this year, but we'll take a look there. In the meantime, here's some interesting stuff about Tampa Bay. They've won 2 straight games, but they're 3-4 in away games. But historically, they are 21-64 in games under 50 degrees, and they were 0-13 under 32 degrees until Tom Brady came in and knocked Green Bay off in the playoffs and knocked me out of Survivor Pool. The key is, can the Green Bay offense get back on track versus that number 30 pass defense? I'm going to look at Jaden Reed, and I may look at Dobbs as well on his receiving total over if they're low enough. Again, Green Bay has not had a 100-yard receiver yet this year. Tampa Bay has given up the most in the league. Carolina, Atlanta. This one's in Carolina, so that kind of scares you a notch. Atlanta has beaten Carolina 3 of the last 4 and 9 of 12. Atlanta's in the playoff race. They need to win this thing. Carolina, though, they've lost 6 in a row, averaging only basically 12 points a game. They lost to Atlanta in week 1, 24-10, despite outgaining Atlanta by 60 yards. But again, Carolina had 3 turnovers, right? Both teams ran the ball well. The over-under is 38.5. Carolina is 5-0 to the under at home. Atlanta is 3-2 to the under away. I like the under this game. I may look at Bijan Robinson or Algiers rushing over, but I'm taking the game under. I think Atlanta wins this one. Denver, Detroit. This is a big game. This is a big game. I mean, Detroit at the beginning of the year, remember, probably the first 7-8 games, they were top 5 offense, top 5 defense. Look where their defense is now. It is sliding backwards, while the Bears, who started off awful, are now up near a top 10 defense after winning last week against Detroit. And Jared Goff threw for only like 160 yards. He was terrible. In the meantime, Denver, 7-1 in the under since week 5. This OU is currently at 47.5. But you can see Denver games have not hit 47.5 once. In fact, they've only hit 40 3 times. The other 4 games were below 40. And even though Detroit's offense is really good, and it looks like on this chart, Denver's defense is all red, since week 5, that defense is all blue. It's done really well. So don't let that fool you. Both these teams give up a lot of points to the tight ends. Denver is the second worst behind Cincinnati, which makes you want to take a look at Laporta's over receiving yards. Of course, I said that last week with the Bears, and he didn't do anything. However, the difference this week is he's at home in a dome where Goff plays good, so I'm definitely looking at that one. And I'm looking at the under here. Jacksonville at Baltimore. Baltimore's won 3 straight, averaging over 30 points a game. They've won 7 of 8. Lamar Jackson had 310 yards passing last week against the Rams, whose pass defense is actually 40 yards better than Jacksonville's pass defense, is my point here. Jacksonville is one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Everybody's throwing for 1 million yards against them. So including Jake Browning a few weeks ago, he had 350 against them. So if there's a game Lamar's going to throw for 300, it's this one. Jacksonville has a really good rush defense, top 5. So, but, obviously Lamar brings a different dimension to that running attack. So I think Baltimore will have a better rushing game than most teams against Jacksonville. But still, you can exploit that pass defense. I like Baltimore to win this game. I think they'll go in there and knock Jacksonville off. And like I said, I like the team total over, and I like Lively and Beckham possibly. Here's your risky games. There's 5 of them. One big one, Dallas at Buffalo. Let's take a look here. You can see all the blue numbers on this chart, which are good. Buffalo's lost 3 of 5 in desperation mode, but then they beat Kansas City. Buffalo is 5-1 at home, winning by a margin of 15 points a game. Dallas has won 5 straight and 7 of 8. However, in the last 5, Dallas has outscored opponents 40-17, basically. They've just been phenomenal, annihilating teams. But you have to remember, again, who is Dallas playing? The record of opponents Dallas has beaten is 50-80, and that includes, Philly's 10-3. So if you take that out, it's like 40-77. They haven't played anybody. And I know people keep harping on this. You can only play your schedule. But still, it's like, Dallas playing my local high school, basically. They're just destroying these teams, but it's not fair. The stats aren't fair. Buffalo is actually going to give them a test defensively and offensively. I think Buffalo's in desperation mode, badly needs this win, just like last week at KC. I think they potentially win this game. Chargers at Vegas in a risky game. Home teams won the last 5 in this series, 4-4 in the last 8. Herbert's out for the season, so it's a battle of backups. Aiden O'Connell versus Easton Stick. The sticker, they've got Dicker the kicker and Sticker the QB. So anyways, Vegas is 25 rush defense versus Chargers 26 rush offense. Now, here's what's interesting here. This Stick guy was a great running quarterback in college. Not great, but pretty good. Really good, actually. Had a couple 100-yard rushing games. So I think what you could see here, Herbert never ran the ball. This guy's going to take off and run a lot more. I would look at Easton Stick rushing over total. I'm going to look at Eckler's rushing over total because Vegas, that's where you can exploit them. And with this new quarterback, I think the Chargers will actually try to run the ball. They'll commit to it more than they ever have. They rarely do. Vegas, as you can see, they scored 30 against the Giants, 21 against New England. All other teams, it's been 18 points or less. Chargers have number 29 pass defense, but O'Connell hasn't been very good. They just don't score at all. Both teams are 10-3 to the under. 10-3. They're the 2 best under teams in the NFL. So logic says play the under. I might look at Devontae Adams over receiving yards. Easton Stick rush yards over. Houston at Tennessee. Stroud needs 834 passing yards to break the NFL rookie record. He's in concussion protocol. Hopefully he'll get to play here. We've talked about this all year. Tennessee's 4-1 at home, averaging 25 points a game. They did lose to Indy in their last home game, though, where they scored 17 points the first half and nothing in the second half. Although Levis looked really good against Miami in the second half this last week. Houston's 2-4 in away games. Tennessee's beaten Houston 5 of the last 7. Now, this is not a misprint. Last 5 games against Houston, Derrick Henry has rushed for 211, 212, 250, 219, and 126 yards. That is, that is not a misprint. That's for real. 200, 200, 200, 200, 126, and 10 total touchdowns. So that's the key, is that rush defense against Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry will have some success. I don't know if he's going to get 200 yards. He's probably not even going to get 120 yards, but I can see him getting 80 yards and a tutty. So we'll take a look at what his over is. I'm kind of leaning over here because Tennessee can score at home, and I know Houston can score. They're going to put points on the board. So look for that one to maybe go over. I might play that over at 37. Pittsburgh at Indiana. Indiana's a number 26 rush defense. So thank God Pittsburgh won't have to rely on Trubisky because they've been absolutely horrific the last 2 weeks. They were a playoff team, and now they've lost 2 straight to Arizona and New England. 2 of the 3 worst teams in the NFL, period. There's not much more you can say about that. Indy had won 4 straight before losing to Cincinnati last week, who's kind of rolling right now. Indy's the best over team at 9-4. Pittsburgh's one of the worst over teams at 3-10. So take your choice here. Indiana has been over 20 points every game except New England, and then last week against Cincinnati. That was a shocker. That was a buster. The OU is 42.5 here. Pittsburgh has only had 1 game go over 42.5 points all freaking year. So be careful there. I think my best play is I'm going to take the Indiana team total over 21.5. I just can't trust Pittsburgh to get there. I may look at either Najee Harris or Jalen Warren rush over because that's where you can get Indy. Definitely not looking at Zach Moss. They make his number too high. But I would potentially look at Minshew's passing over as Pittsburgh gives up a lot of 300-yard passers. I'd look at Pittman or Josh Downs, see where they're at. Interesting. All right. Chicago at Cleveland. Now, this is a weird one. Chicago has won 3 of 4 games now. Should have been 4 for 4, really. Overall, though, they're 2-5 in away games. But I like what Eberflus is doing. He's a defensive coach, and this defense is absolutely improving and getting better throughout the season. And, boy, if they get the number 1 pick from Carolina next year and take a Marvin Harrison, now you've got an offense there with DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison, Cole Kmet. That looks pretty good. And Fields seems to be getting better and better. Cleveland is 6-1 at home by an average of 20-12. That defense is really good. That includes wins against Cincinnati, San Francisco, and Jacksonville. Flacco threw for over 300 yards last week, but that was against Jacksonville. Chicago has a number 23 pass defense, but they're top 5 in the last 3 weeks. Both teams are top 10 to the over. Okay, surprisingly, both these teams play overs. Cleveland is number 1 versus tight ends. Chicago's number 28. That's why we like Njoku over his receiving yards. I might like a Kareem Hunt if Ford is hurt at all. I heard he might be. Cleveland number 1 defense. Chicago's number 12. The over 37.5, and I'm probably leaning over here. All right, my picks in the primary poll. If I were still around, I would go Cincinnati this week. I feel really comfortable taking the Bengals at home. Browning's playing well. The offense is actually playing really well. And the defense, when their offense plays well, for whatever reason, their defense plays great. They've shut down some big offenses like Buffalo, San Francisco. Last week, they shut down Indy, who scores 20 every week and didn't do it. So against Nick Mullins, his first start here for Minnesota, and I don't know if Justin Jefferson is going to play or not, so I absolutely like Cincinnati to roll this game, and I would pick them in Survivor. Here's our team records against the spread. You can see the best teams, Dallas there, Philly, Minnesota, etc. Worst teams, Carolina, a disaster. New England, a disaster. New Orleans, a disaster. So you can see the other teams there. Over-unders, Indy's the number 1 over team. And you can see the 8-5 squads there, among them Detroit, Chicago, Miami, etc. We have 13 teams over 500 now to the over. That's way up from where we were early in the year. We had 6 or 7. On the underside, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, Vegas, Minnesota are all up there. Giants, Kansas City, New England. Kansas City, of course, plays New England. We have 19 teams over 500 to the under, so that's really come down. Here's another quick thing I want to show you. Here are the teams who give up the most 100-yard rushers, 100-yard receivers, and 300-yard passers, all right? And this is where I look for my player prop. Arizona's given up the most 100-yard rushers. Denver, all theirs came early in the year, so be careful there. But Green Bay's given a bunch up here lately, as is Indiana. 100-yard receivers, Tampa Bay's given up the most. Seattle, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Washington. So I look for receivers playing those teams. It's worked pretty well. 300-yard passes, you can see Jacksonville leads, and then Tampa and Philly. It's why I kind of like Jordan Love this week. I think he'll have a good game against Tampa. All right, here's my top 5 plays for Week 15 for the year with 37, 32, and 1. I'm going Cincinnati minus 3.5. I think they have a good game this week. Nick Mullins first game of starter. Chicago, Cleveland over. This one's risky, but I'm going to do it. Rams team total over. Love it this week against Washington. Isaiah Likely receiving over, as we talked about. They're playing against Jacksonville, who's the second worst team against tight ends. And Baltimore should have no problem throwing the ball. I think Likely's total should likely be reasonable. San Francisco team total over. We're going back that well. 30.5. They're playing Arizona, who gives up a ton of points. I think this week, so hopefully San Francisco gets it. On the bonus side, I like pushing the Rams team total up to 30.5, getting that plus 136 money there. Cooper Kupp over 68 yards looks like an easy one. The Rams Washington game over. Now, Washington and Sam Howell score a lot of points, and I think they can at least get in the 20s here. This game could be a big over. Might be worth looking at teasing it up to get some plus money. Giants plus the 6. The Giants are playing well enough. New Orleans doesn't beat teams by a lot typically. Now, last week they slammed Carolina by 22. But the Giants offense can at least move the ball, and Barkley is a great running back against that weak spot for New Orleans. So kind of like Giants plus 6. Can't see New England under. They're both great under teams. I don't see New England scoring much here. Jordan Love passing yards over. I like that against Tampa Bay, who gives up a lot of those. And then here's my players I'm on the lookout for right now, okay? There's no guarantee I'm playing them because I have not seen totals yet. But Eckler over his rush yards, Stick over his rush yards against Las Vegas. Jaden Reed against Tampa Bay. Rashad White rushing against the Pack. McCaffrey rushing against Arizona. Nico Collins. A.J. Brown. T.J. Hawkinson against Cincinnati, who has the worst defense against tight ends. Jalen Hurts passing, Lamar Jackson passing. I like both of those possibly. Deontay Johnson's receiving against Indiana. His total is usually low enough, and he makes a lot of grabs, especially against a defense that's not that good against the pass. Barkley's rushing over, and maybe even Tommy DeVito's rushing over against the Saints. He ran for over 70 yards last week. That's a shocker. So, all right, my pick of the primary pool, like I said, I'm going with Cincinnati. Hey, guys, thanks for being with us. Thanks for CooperGroove.com, our sponsor. Please check out their baseball bats, golf grips, drumsticks. Please like and subscribe to our channel. This has been Pick Winners with Cheezeman, week 15 and about survivor. Good luck, and we hope you survive.